Kholmogory Village. It is fair to say that not every village hospital is known for sterile cleanliness, sparkling windows, or a particularly peaceful atmosphere. But the village of Kholmogory itself was bright and welcoming. Nestled among small hills, it looked like something out of a fairy tale in the wintertime. A little white church with golden domes and a narrow bell tower stood beautifully on a distant high hill. I ended up in this village and in this hospital completely by chance. As they say, God was merciful. Some kind-hearted people found me near the train station and picked me up. So, I know very little about these parts. I live in the city, keeping to myself, and I have been lonely for a long time. Last year, I retired from a construction plant where I'd worked for nearly 40 years. You might ask me, what do you have to show for it? Well, in truth, nothing. No friends, no money. Fortunately, I managed to get a tiny apartment, though that wasn't my doing. An influential gentleman took a liking to our large communal apartment in a nice neighborhood, so he bought everyone out and scattered the neighbors into small individual flats. He moved me into one with my grown daughter, who has completely forgotten the way to my door ever since. Over my years of work, I also developed an ulcer, a perforated one, as they later told me. It hit me out of nowhere. I was on my way to visit an old friend, but I didn't have his exact address. I got off at the station and suddenly felt a pain, a terrible, stabbing pain, like a knife. Then I fell. Weakness, a cold, sticky sweat. After that, I remember very little. As I said, some caring people called an ambulance. Today, I was moved into a general ward. There are 4 of us here, each with our own problems and our own stories. An old grandfather lay by the window, sweet, quiet, and gentle. His whole family comes to visit him. They are very warm people. 2 young boys got into a car accident, but fortunately, it wasn't serious. They were patched up, their wounds were stitched, and they will likely go home soon. Everyone here is a local. I am the only accidental guest. Suddenly, a woman walked into the ward. She wore a white medical coat and carried a clear bag of tangerines. That unmistakable scent of childhood and New Year's Eve made everyone sit up in their beds. Even the grandfather smiled. It was clear she had come to visit someone else. But seeing a men's ward, she paused for a moment. Then with a slight smile, she said, "Please, help yourselves." She offered, holding the bag out to each of us. How little a person really needs. Just a bit of attention, a kind smile, and an extended hand. I took one tangerine and said, "So, I am not the only accidental guest here. You are our accidental guest, too." "You could say that," she replied. "I got the wrong ward, but since it happened this way, I'll come visit you again next time." I cannot explain the warmth that spread through my entire body like living water. It even seemed to touch my incision, which hadn't yet healed. I held that soft, smooth tangerine in my hands with a long-forgotten feeling, the way a man touches a woman. What was it about her that warmed my long-orphaned body and brought my soul back to life? Her calm violet eyes, her ash-blonde hair, modestly pulled into a loose bun. She carried the peace of provincial life, a promise, and a stillness in the air that you just wanted to breathe in. Completely independent of my will, my mind, my body, and my whole being began waiting for her. It was as if the long life before this meeting had never been lived. It felt as though the arrival of this complete stranger had wiped away and erased my entire past. All the old pain of my loneliness, and the daughter who had abandoned me many years ago. Everything was forgiven at once. It was as if grace had descended from heaven. Tonight, it feels as though I'm born anew. I've pardoned all my life, my daughter too. 3 times I crossed myself with praise so deep for giving me a soul that does not sleep. I would give up the world for this embrace, to spend my remaining years within her grace. And if God willed, I'd be baptized again, to love her only, free of past and pain. She returned 2 days later, bringing with her the scent of frosty sunshine. She greeted me warmly. It's a beautiful, crisp winter day today, just like the poems. I smiled and quoted, "Frost and sun, a day of wonders." She smiled back and added, "Well, I am a literature teacher, but it is impressive that you know it." That was the first thing we shared. "You teach literature?" "Russian language and literature. This is my final year before retirement," she said, and then added a moment later, "And after that, I will take care of my house. It has grown quite neglected with how busy I've been. My name is Vadim Sergeyevich. It's a pleasure to meet you." "We share a patronymic then," she said. "I am Olga Sergeyevna." "How well that name suits you. Calm, a bit old-fashioned, soft." "How interesting. I never thought a name could suit someone like a well-chosen scarf. Not just the face, the soul. I am no architect of the human spirit, but in a past life, I must have been a poet. In this life, however, I can fix a neglected house, if you trust me and allow me to." The house was sturdy, built with old-fashioned craftsmanship. The logs were treated and oiled, and the floors were solid, creaking just slightly here and there as if reminding you of their age. The shutters and window frames were intricately carved, looking like something out of an old folk tale. In the center of the living room stood a wide, unpainted oak table with tall, heavy chairs. Opposite the entrance was a carved oak chest of drawers, clearly an inheritance from her parents. Of course, after my tiny city apartment, these grand rooms felt unfamiliar. But her presence changed everything. Yet, she didn't quite fit this rustic interior. It was like imagining a bunch of lilacs in an enameled pitcher. Neither can ruin the other. But Olga Sergeyevna belonged in a different kind of estate, one from the 19th century, where those same lilacs would stand in a tall, slender glass vase. An enameled pitcher full of cornflowers and daisies would be more at home here. Vadim Sergeyevich understood these things. He was well educated. It was just that life had taken a bad turn. A deep warmth and emotional connection quickly grew between them. They truly needed each other, the way a butterfly is drawn to the nectar of lavender, or the way a pearl needs its shell. Winter passed quickly. There were joyful walks through the snow-covered forest and heartfelt, honest conversations over evening tea. They shared something else too, a mutual love for old classical literature. They spent long evenings reading aloud to one another. Both the house and the couple seemed to grow younger. Having grown accustomed to each other's ways, they looked forward to spring with delight. Soon, the forest seemed to come alive, shaking off the remaining blanket of snow. The first lilies of the valley awoke, and the breath of spring only added romance to their feelings. One day, While sorting through winter clothes and putting them away in the attic, Vadim Sergeyevich, who went by his full name in the house for a long time, heard Olga Sergeyevna speak. She had long since become his Oal Yushka. She said, as if in passing, "Vadusha, look over there in the corner under the stairs. My father's guitar should be there, a memory from my childhood." The fact that she had brought him into her inner circle, that she called him Vadusha, and that she trusted him with her father's guitar, it all touched him so deeply that unexpected quiet tears filled his eyes. Along with them, he swallowed a wave of pure happiness. Yushka, to celebrate your final graduating class and our very first spring together, why don't you wear a wedding dress? And we'll go on a honeymoon. She was caught off guard, and her cheeks flushed pink. Vadusha, it feels a bit awkward to get married at our age. And who was it that said love bows to no age? Are you being serious? Are you proposing to me? She asked, looking down, blushing and happy at the same time. And why not, Olyushka? We are pure before God and our intentions are bright. So, will you be my wife? With joy, she answered. She touched him so openly, so tenderly, and with such gratitude that his sentimental nature got the better of him again. They spent their honeymoon on a steamboat along the Volga River. There were unforgettable, deep orange sunsets and endless Russian riverbanks filled with a quiet melancholy and an inimitable charm. Summer came in full force. They went to the forest to pick berries, and behind the house, near the fence, the blackcurrants were already ripening. Together with the wild mint, they created a fragrant duet. They made jam together, saying to each other, "When winter comes, we'll open a jar with our tea, and this beautiful aroma will carry us right back into summer." The sky grew noticeably gray, the air smelled of dampness, the leaves turned red, and autumn began to fall. The rising wind swept its fragrant beauty away. On one of those dreary evenings, when the sky had already turned a lonely dark color, someone knocked sharply and nervously on the window. Olga Sergeyevna went to the window and asked, "Can I help you with something?" Standing outside was a heavy, middle-aged woman wearing a gray shawl with disheveled hair escaping from underneath it. Next to her stood a boy, clearly frozen and lightly dressed. "Help yourself. Are you the one who took over my father?" A sickening sense of foreboding weighed heavily on her soul. Walking over to Vadim Sergeyevich, she said, "It seems the honeymoon is over. Your children are here, and I don't think they mean well." Vadim Sergeyevich was so frightened that his heart raced to the door ahead of him. Furious shouts and reproaches could already be heard from the entryway. After about 10 minutes of relentless shouting, Olga Sergeyevna opened the door and said firmly, "Come into the house and continue your conversation peacefully. I cannot allow you to cause a scene outside my windows. But if you don't wish to come inside, that is your choice. The station is not far from here." Vadim Sergeyevich said sharply, "Why are you being like this? These are my children." "That is exactly why I suggested you stop shouting by the windows and come into a warm house." His daughter screamed that her foot would never cross the threshold of this cursed house. Vadim Sergeyevich remained silent, but despite everything, he felt resentful toward Olga Sergeyevna. He felt she should have welcomed his family, warmed them up, convinced them to stay, and found love in her heart for them. He didn't have many belongings. Everything fit into a single travel bag. Picking it up, he spoke coldly and reproachfully at the doorway. "This isn't right. It just isn't right." And the three of them walked away without looking back. The late autumn sky quickly swallowed their silhouettes.